Why self-control builds unshakable power. Imagine two men standing at the crossroads of life. One is mighty in appearance, his voice commands attention, and his wealth seems endless. Yet behind his strength lies a restless soul. He is pulled in every direction by his cravings: food, lust, power, recognition. When insulted, he erupts. When tempted, he yields. His empire is vast, but he cannot rule his own mind. The second man stands beside him with less grandeur. His clothes are plain, his demeanor calm, yet his eyes burn with an inner fire, steady and unbroken. He is unmoved by praise or insult, comfort or hardship. He may not command armies, but he governs something far greater, himself. Ask yourself, which of these men is truly powerful? This is the question the Stoics never stopped asking. For what is power if it cannot endure the winds of fortune? What is greatness if it depends on what others give or take away? The Stoic answer is simple yet difficult. True power is self-control. The one who masters himself cannot be shaken, for his dominion lies within, beyond the reach of fortune, beyond the reach of fate. This is why Marcus Aurelius, burdened with the weight of an empire, still found time each dawn to remind himself, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." But let us not treat these words as distant wisdom carved into the marble of history. Let us bring them to life in our own struggles. Every day you and I wake to a battle. It is not fought with swords, but with choices. Do you rise with discipline or lie in bed, ruled by sloth? Do you face insult with calm or react with anger? Do you waste hours in trivial distractions or bend your mind toward purpose? The arena of self-control is not the battlefield of nations, it is the battlefield of the soul. Win there, and no external enemy can conquer you. Lose there, and you will be a slave no matter how high you rise in the eyes of the world. The first lesson, then, is this. Power does not come from domination over others, but from dominion over oneself. The world is full of men who can command armies, yet cannot command their own desires. It is full of men who can bend nations to their will, but cannot bend their own habits. These are not powerful men. They are captives disguised as kings. If you seek unshakable strength, begin not with the world, but with yourself. What, then, is power to the Stoics? Not the trembling fear of others, not wealth that breeds dependence, not fame that fades like mist in the sun. Power, in the Stoic sense, is mastery over the impulses that drag us away from reason. Seneca wrote that no man is free who is a slave to his body, his lusts, or his greed. Epictetus, born into slavery, found freedom not by chains being broken, but by training his mind to submit to reason alone. And Marcus Aurelius, emperor of Rome, reminded himself constantly that thrones and titles mean nothing if one cannot govern the self. Power is not given, it is cultivated, and its seed is self-control. Think for a moment about the things people usually chase when they seek power. They chase wealth, hoping it will give them security. They chase fame, thinking it will grant them immortality. They chase influence, believing it will allow them to bend the world to their will. Yet wealth can vanish overnight, fame can sour into infamy, and influence can be stripped away in a single decree. What remains when all else is gone? Only the character you have built within. This, and this alone, cannot be stolen. It cannot be corrupted unless you yourself abandon it. This is why the Stoics insisted that the only true good lies in virtue, and the only true power lies in the soul disciplined by reason. Self-control is not repression, as some might think. It is not denying the humanity within us. It is guiding the passions so that they serve rather than enslave. The man who controls himself does not kill desire, he transforms it. His hunger becomes drive, his anger becomes righteous courage, his fear becomes awareness. The passions, left ungoverned, destroy. But under discipline, they are harnessed and directed. Like a wild horse tamed, they can carry the rider to victory. The difference between ruin and greatness is not the presence of passions, but the control of them. This is why the Stoics regarded self-mastery as the highest form of strength. Consider Epictetus again. Though he lived under the harsh command of a master, his mind remained free because he did not grant authority over his inner life. "You may chain my leg," he said, "but not even Zeus himself can conquer my will." Contrast this with emperors who had the world at their feet, yet were prisoners of their indulgence, paranoia, or rage. Who was the stronger man, the slave who mastered himself, or the emperor who could not master his appetites? Unshakable power, then, is not about never being challenged. It is about standing firm when the storm comes. The disciplined mind is like a fortress built on rock. Winds may howl, enemies may press, fortune may rage, but the walls stand unbroken. This is the essence of Stoic strength. This is the power that no enemy can touch, no fate can overturn. To govern yourself is to hold the only empire that never falls. There is a tyrant more cruel than any ruler, and it does not sit on a throne. It lives inside of us, whispering in the language of desire, anger, and fear. The Stoics warned that unless we conquer this tyrant, we will forever remain slaves. Desire is the voice that tells you more will satisfy you. More food, more wealth, more pleasure, more recognition. Yet the more you feed it, the hungrier it becomes. Anger is the fire that flares when your pride is wounded, when you are slighted, when the world fails to bow to your will. Fear is the shadow that makes you hesitate, that convinces you to shrink back, to avoid pain at the cost of your dignity. These three, desire, anger, and fear, are the chains that bind mankind, stronger than any iron forged in a smith's fire. Consider desire first. What man has ever found peace in the endless chase of his cravings? A banquet may satisfy hunger for a moment, but by the next day the appetite returns, stronger and more demanding. A man who chases pleasure is like a sailor trying to fill a leaking ship with water. No matter how much he pours in, the sea drains it away. Seneca warned that he who is enslaved to his desires can never be rich, for he is always poor in contentment. When desire rules, you are not a master. You are a servant to whatever tempts you next. Now turn to anger. How many kings have destroyed themselves, not because of enemies abroad, but because of the fire they nurtured within? Anger blinds reason, burns bridges, and leaves behind a ruin greater than any external foe could cause. The Stoics did not deny that anger was natural, but they insisted that to indulge it was weakness, not strength. True strength lies in holding your tongue when provoked, in refusing to grant another power over your peace of mind. For when you rage, you hand the reins of your soul to the one who offended you. You may think you are striking back, but in truth you have already surrendered. And then there is fear. Fear persuades us to bow before circumstances, to betray our values, to exchange dignity for safety. It is fear that silences the truth-teller, that chains the potential of the brave. Epictetus told his students that death is not frightening. It is our judgment about death that terrifies us. The man who fears loss will never be free, for he lives at the mercy of chance. But the man who trains himself to see death as natural, pain as endurable, and misfortune as a test, cannot be shaken by fear. He may feel it rise in his chest, but he does not obey it. He walks forward anyway, and in doing so, he proves his freedom. Desire, anger, and fear, each of these, when left unchecked, is a master. And the tragedy is that most people live as loyal servants to them, never realizing that their so-called freedom is a mask for their bondage. The Stoics challenged us to wake up and see the truth. You cannot control the world, but you can control your response to it. You cannot dictate fortune, but you can dictate whether you are ruled by passion or reason. The man who fails to master himself will always be ruled by something smaller than him. The man who succeeds becomes untouchable. This is why self-control is not a mere virtue among others, but the foundation of strength itself. Strength of body may win battles, but without strength of mind, those victories will not last. A soldier can conquer enemies on the field, but if he cannot conquer his cravings, he will be undone in the peace that follows. A ruler may rise through cunning or might, but if he is ruled by lust or greed, he will eventually fall, taking countless others with him. Self-control ensures consistency. It prevents the collapse that comes when desire, anger, or fear seize the throne of the heart. Think of Epictetus again, the slave who became a philosopher. His body was bound, his circumstances lowly, but his mind was unbroken. His master could command his labor, but not his will. This strength was not muscle or position, it was mastery of self. Or think of Marcus Aurelius, beset by wars, plague, and betrayal. Every day he bore the crushing weight of empire, yet he reminded himself to remain calm, rational, unmoved by the storms outside. His strength was not found in legions or riches, but in his refusal to let impulses dictate his decisions. History shows us countless examples of the opposite as well, men who possessed every advantage yet lacked control of themselves. Alexander the Great conquered the world, but could not conquer his temper or his appetites, dying young and leaving his empire in chaos. Nero ruled an empire, but was ruled by cruelty and indulgence, and so destroyed both himself and Rome. Their stories remind us that brilliance without discipline is ruin, that power without self-control is an illusion waiting to collapse. Self-control gives clarity. In the heat of insult, it allows you to pause and see what truly matters. In the face of temptation, it grants the strength to wait and choose wisely. In times of fear, it steadies your heart so that you can act with courage rather than retreat in shame. Without it, life becomes a ship tossed by every wave. With it, life becomes a vessel guided by a steady hand, no matter how wild the seas. This is why the Stoics placed such emphasis on governing the self. To be calm when provoked, to be moderate when tempted, to be courageous when frightened. These are the marks of a truly strong man. Self-control is strength because it keeps reason on the throne where it belongs. And when reason governs, you are unshakable, no matter the trial, no matter the fortune that rises or falls around you. There is immense power in a single word, a word many are too weak to speak: no. To say no when the world urges yes is to declare independence from the chains of compulsion. When you say no to gossip, you rise above the petty. When you say no to indulgence, you preserve your strength. When you say no to rage, you keep your dignity. The man who can refuse is the man who is free. The man who cannot is a captive to whatever tempts him. The Stoics understood that discipline is often subtraction, not addition. It is not about how many pleasures you can gather, but about how many vices you can cast away. Think of how easily lives are ruined by the inability to say no. A leader who cannot refuse flattery will soon be surrounded by liars. A soldier who cannot refuse fear will flee when courage is demanded. A man who cannot refuse his appetites will soon find his body broken and his spirit enslaved. In contrast, a person who practices the art of refusal grows stronger with every temptation resisted. Each no is a stone placed in the foundation of an unshakable fortress. Every time you deny yourself an indulgence that weakens the soul, you train yourself to be ready when greater trials come. History is littered with examples of men undone not by armies, but by appetites. Think of rulers who lost their thrones because they could not resist the lure of wealth or women. Think of warriors who fell because wine dulled their edge. These men believed they were powerful, yet they lacked the most fundamental power, the power to govern themselves. Their downfall was not imposed upon them. It grew from within, watered by every weak yes they gave to temptation. Their lives became proof that the inability to say no is not freedom, but the straightest path to ruin. To say no is to protect the most precious thing you possess, your reason, your soul, your inner kingdom. It is not an act of loss, but of gain. By refusing fleeting pleasure, you gain lasting peace. By denying base impulses, you gain nobility. By shutting the door on temptation, you open the gates to strength. This is why the Stoics held that temperance is not deprivation, but liberation. For every yes you give to vice robs you of your sovereignty, but every no restores it. Power, therefore, is not found in endless permission, but in disciplined refusal. Freedom is a word often misused. Many believe freedom means doing whatever you wish, chasing every impulse, indulging every craving. Yet this so-called freedom is nothing but another form of slavery, for the man who is ruled by desires is bound hand and foot, even if no chains are visible. Epictetus said it plainly, "No man is free who is not master of himself." The Stoics taught that real freedom is not found in the removal of all restraint, but in the placement of the right restraint, the restraint that keeps reason in command. Consider the paradox. Restraint creates liberation. The glutton is not free when he cannot pass a feast without indulging. He is a prisoner of his stomach. The drunkard is not free when he cannot refuse wine. He is chained to the cup. The coward is not free when fear dictates his choices. He is caged by his own mind. Yet the man who controls his appetites can walk past a banquet untroubled, can pour away the wine without longing, can face danger without being mastered by dread. This man is free even if locked in a prison cell, because no external power can chain his will. He possesses an inner sovereignty untouchable by circumstance. This is why the Stoics admired men like Socrates, who could drink or abstain with equal calm, who could walk among beauty without being enslaved by lust, who could face death without trembling. His freedom was not dependent on fortune, but on his command over himself. Compare this to the wealthy merchant who cannot sleep unless his coffers are full, or the politician who cannot endure silence unless his name is praised. These men are not free. They are captives dressed in fine clothes. Their chains are invisible, but they weigh more heavily than iron. Freedom through self-control is not only for philosophers and sages, it is for each of us in our daily struggles. When you resist scrolling endlessly through distractions, you prove your freedom. When you speak truth rather than flattery, you prove your freedom. When you endure hardship without complaint, you prove your freedom. Each act of self-control is a declaration that you belong to yourself and not to your passions. This, the Stoics taught, is the highest kind of power, the power that cannot be stripped away, even if fortune takes everything else. In this sense, the prisoner who accepts his fate with dignity may be freer than the wealthy man who trembles at every market fluctuation. The beggar who controls his desires may be richer than the king who cannot. For true power is not in possessions, not in titles, not in external liberty, but in the mastery of the self. The chains of desire, anger, and fear can bind the mightiest emperor, but the strength of self-control can set free even the humblest slave. Self-control may sound lofty, but its battlefield is often small and ordinary. It is not only tested in the grand trials of life, but in the quiet choices we make each day. The Stoics knew that philosophy was not merely something to be read in books, but to be practiced in the marketplace, at the dinner table, in conversation, in solitude. If you want to know whether you are mastering yourself, look not to distant ideals, but to your daily habits. These small battles reveal whether reason governs or whether you have surrendered to impulse. Consider how often we are tempted by distraction. You open your day with the intention of focus, yet your phone calls out to you, offering endless entertainment, trivial news, and fleeting pleasures. Hours are lost, not because an enemy stormed your gates, but because you willingly handed him the key. Self-control here is the art of reclaiming your time, of setting boundaries for your attention, of choosing to direct your mind toward what nourishes rather than what numbs. To resist distraction is no small feat. It is training for the greater wars of the soul. Food and drink offer another proving ground. The Stoics practiced moderation, not as a punishment, but as an exercise in freedom. To eat only what is necessary, to drink without excess, is to remind yourself that you are not ruled by appetite. Contrast this with the man who cannot refuse another bite, who cannot spend a night without indulgence. He may laugh at discipline, but he has handed his freedom to his belly. Each time you rise from the table satisfied rather than stuffed, you strengthen the chains of reason over desire. Each time you say no to what weakens you, you add another stone to the fortress of your self-command. Anger at work, in family, in daily interactions also tests us constantly. How easy it is to let irritation rise at a careless remark, at poor service, at someone cutting ahead in line. Yet every time you lose yourself to irritation, you declare that strangers have more control over you than you do. Self-control here means pausing, breathing, asking, "Is this worth the dignity of my peace?" Most of the time, the answer is no. To govern your response is not weakness, it is mastery. You remain sovereign over yourself while others are tossed about by their temper. Even in speech, discipline shows its power. Words once spoken cannot be recalled, and many men have destroyed relationships, reputations, and even nations by failing to restrain their tongues. To pause before speaking, to consider whether words build or destroy, is an act of self-control that prevents endless regret. The Stoics taught that silence is often more powerful than speech, for silence cannot betray you. Each time you master your tongue, you strengthen your command over yourself. These daily acts of self-control may seem small, but they are training. Just as a soldier prepares for war by drilling in smaller exercises, so too do we prepare for life's greatest trials by practicing discipline in the ordinary. When fortune strikes with hardship, you will be ready because you have built the habit of mastery in the little things. The man who cannot control himself in the small will collapse in the great. The man who practices daily restraint will stand unbroken when storms arrive. Endurance is one of the greatest proofs of self-control. Anyone can remain calm when life is easy. The true measure of strength is what happens when hardship presses upon you. The Stoics admired the ability to bear and forbear, to endure what cannot be changed, and to restrain one's own impulses in the process. Marcus Aurelius wrote to himself again and again, "Do not complain, do not rage, do not despair. Endure with dignity as nature intended. For life itself is a test of endurance, and the one who withstands without breaking is the one who holds true power." Think of the hardships faced by those who practice this philosophy. Epictetus was beaten by his master, yet he learned to endure without bitterness. He taught that we cannot control what others do to us, but we can always control how we meet it. This is endurance, not mere suffering, but the noble acceptance of what lies outside our power. To endure is to refuse to let pain, loss, or injustice take away your inner freedom. It is to remain steady when life attempts to bend you. Endurance also requires patience. The soldier in battle must wait, holding his line even as fear screams at him to flee. The parent raising a child must continue with patience through sleepless nights and endless trials. The man building virtue must accept that mastery takes years, not moments. Without endurance, discipline collapses. Without endurance, virtue cannot be sustained. Endurance is the slow-burning fire that keeps self-control alive through seasons of hardship. The Stoics believed that suffering itself could be transformed into strength. Every hardship is a weight added to the muscles of the soul, forcing it to grow stronger if we choose to lift it rather than collapse beneath it. Hunger trains the body to live with less. Insult trains the mind to rise above opinion. Loss trains the heart to love without attachment. To endure is to treat life's trials not as curses, but as opportunities for growth. Amor fati, the love of fate, is born in this mindset. To welcome what comes, not because it is easy, but because it forges you into something greater. Modern life may not subject us to exile or chains, but the demands of endurance remain. We endure stress at work, betrayal in relationships, financial strain, illness, failure. In each of these, the same choice lies before us. Will we break and curse our fate, or will we stand and grow stronger through it? To endure is not to surrender to despair, but to accept with courage and continue forward. The unshakable man is not one who avoids pain, but one who endures it with calm and dignity. Endurance is not passive, it is active strength. It is the choice to face pain with courage, to face hardship with composure, to face life with unyielding spirit. It is what transforms suffering into wisdom, weakness into resilience. Without endurance, self-control would collapse under the weight of life's trials. With endurance, it becomes unbreakable. This is the weapon of the Stoic, not to escape hardship, but to stand firm in its midst, unshaken, unbroken, unafraid. Leadership without self-control is nothing more than tyranny dressed in authority. A leader is not measured by how loudly he commands, but by how steadily he governs himself. Followers instinctively trust the one who remains calm in crisis, who does not erupt in anger when challenged, who does not crumble under fear when danger looms. Self-control is the unseen foundation of true leadership. Without it, no title, no crown, no army can preserve respect for long. Imagine a general on the battlefield. His soldiers look to him as arrows darken the sky, as chaos threatens to consume order. If he panics, they will break. If he rages uncontrollably, they will scatter. But if he stands steady, eyes clear, voice calm, then courage spreads like fire among them. His composure is their anchor. His discipline is their shield. He may not wield every sword, but through his mastery of himself, he commands the spirits of many. Such a leader is unshakable, not because he can control the storm, but because he controls himself within it. Consider also the quieter forms of leadership, the parent guiding a child, the teacher shaping young minds, the mentor advising one in distress. Each depends upon self-control. The parent who explodes in anger loses the respect of the child. The teacher who cannot restrain ego cannot truly teach. The mentor who indulges in every pleasure cannot expect his pupil to take virtue seriously. But the one who models restraint, who demonstrates calm, who governs himself before attempting to govern others, this is the leader people willingly follow. Respect is not coerced. It is earned through example, and example is born from discipline. History offers countless warnings of leaders undone by lack of control, emperors whose lusts consumed their empires, kings whose rage led nations to ruin, presidents whose weaknesses stained their legacies. No matter their brilliance, wealth or charisma, when their private vices were laid bare, their public power crumbled. They ruled millions, yet could not rule themselves. In contrast, the leaders remembered with reverence are those who endured hardship with composure, who bore responsibility with restraint, who wielded power without being enslaved by it. Their greatness was not only in their victories, but in their discipline. Leadership magnifies what already exists within. If a man lacks self-control, authority will only expose his weakness more widely. If a man possesses self-control, authority will allow his strength to guide many. This is why the Stoics insisted that the first throne one must sit upon is the throne of the self. Only when you govern your own impulses can you rightly govern others. The one who cannot control his tongue should not command an army. The one who cannot resist greed should not manage wealth. The one who cannot restrain his anger should not sit upon a throne. For leadership without self-control is not leadership at all. It is disaster waiting to unfold. But what of external power? Wealth, status, fame, influence? To the untrained eye, these seem like the very definition of strength. Yet the Stoics dismantled this illusion. They saw that anything which depends on fortune is fragile, like a house built upon sand. Wealth can vanish in a single stroke of misfortune. Status can shift with the whispers of public opinion. Fame can decay into infamy overnight. What then remains of the man who has built his identity upon such things? He collapses with them, for he was never rooted in something solid. The illusion of external power seduces because it seems tangible. A man with gold can buy pleasures. A man with armies can command obedience. A man with fame can fill halls with applause. Yet all these are borrowed, not owned. Fortune lends them today and reclaims them tomorrow. The Stoics asked, if your wealth were taken, would you still stand strong? If your titles were stripped, would you still respect yourself? If no crowd praised you, would your soul remain at peace? If the answer is no, then what you possessed was not power, but dependence disguised as strength. Consider how many men have been exalted in one season and ruined in the next because their power was external. Roman senators who basked in influence fell to obscurity when the tide of politics shifted. Merchants who flaunted wealth became beggars when storms sank their ships. Artists who were worshipped for their fame vanished from memory as quickly as they rose. Their downfall was not mere misfortune. It was the revelation that their so-called power was never truly theirs. They mistook possessions for mastery, applause for strength, fortune for permanence. In contrast, the man of self-control holds power that fortune cannot touch. Strip him of wealth and his contentment remains. Remove his title and his dignity stands. Silence the applause, and his soul does not falter. His strength is built upon the one thing that cannot be stolen, mastery of himself. This is the house built upon rock. Storms may beat upon it, floods may rise, but it stands unmoved. External power dazzles, but collapses. Internal power may be invisible, but endures. This is why the Stoics urged us to measure power not by possessions, but by virtue. Ask not how much a man owns, but how much he governs himself. Ask not how loud his name is sung, but how calmly he endures hardship. Ask not how many obey his commands, but how firmly he obeys reason. For when all else fades, when fortune withdraws her gifts, when time erases wealth and titles, what remains is the strength of the soul. That is unshakable power. That is the only power worth seeking. Self-control does not arrive in a single moment of inspiration. It is built slowly and steadily, like a fortress raised stone by stone. The Stoics taught that discipline is a habit, forged by daily training, strengthened by repeated practice, and guarded by constant vigilance. Just as no man becomes strong by lifting a weight once, no man becomes master of himself by resisting a single temptation. It is the accumulation of choices, the steady shaping of character, that forms the unshakable self. One of the most powerful tools the Stoics recommended is reflection. Each evening, look back upon the day as a general reviews a battle. Where did you lose ground? Where did you hold firm? Seneca wrote that he examined his actions every night, asking what he had done well, what he had done poorly, and what he might improve tomorrow. This habit transforms failure into instruction. Each mistake becomes not a reason for shame, but an opportunity for growth. Reflection sharpens awareness, and awareness is the foundation of self-control. Journaling, too, serves as a discipline for the mind. By writing down your thoughts, you bring hidden impulses into the light where reason can examine them. Marcus Aurelius's meditations were nothing more than private notes, reminders to himself to remain calm, to resist temptation, to endure with courage. He was emperor of the world, yet he still needed daily training to master his own soul. If the ruler of Rome required this practice, how much more do we? Small acts of temperance in daily life are also essential. Control your eating by rising from the table satisfied but not full. Control your speech by holding back words that would wound unnecessarily. Control your time by resisting the pull of trivial distractions and directing your energy toward what builds you. These practices may appear minor, but each one is a repetition in the gymnasium of the soul. Each strengthens the will, each prepares you for greater trials. To delay gratification, even for a moment, is to train yourself to resist when the stakes are higher. The Stoics also taught us to expose ourselves to difficulty on purpose. Seneca would sleep on a hard bed or wear rough clothing for a few days to remind himself that comfort is not necessary. Epictetus advised his students to practice going without, so that when deprivation arrived by fate, they would not be broken by it. These exercises build resilience. They remind you that you can endure, that fortune's gifts are not your masters, that you are stronger than you think. To practice hardship is not to seek suffering, but to ensure that suffering does not master you when it comes uninvited. Above all, building self-control requires patience. Do not expect to master yourself in a day, a month, or even a year. Discipline is a lifelong training. Each victory makes the next easier, but vigilance is never abandoned. The man who trains daily grows stronger daily. The one who neglects his training grows weaker, even if he once stood strong. To build self-control is to commit to the long road of mastery, knowing that every step is worth it because it leads to freedom no fortune can shake. Yet how do we know whether we are truly strong? The answer lies in the test of temptation. It is one thing to speak of discipline in calm times, but another to prove it when desire presses upon you with force. Temptation is the battlefield where self-control is revealed. It is not enough to know what is right. It must be chosen when wrong seems easier, sweeter, or safer. Each temptation resisted is a victory that strengthens the soul. Each failure is a lesson to rise and fight again. The ancients told the story of Odysseus and the Sirens, whose song was so sweet that sailors would throw themselves into the sea to reach them, only to perish on the rocks. Odysseus, knowing the danger, filled the ears of his men with wax and had himself tied to the mast of his ship. When the sirens sang, he strained and begged to be released, but his men held firm. He endured the temptation, and because of foresight and discipline, his ship sailed safely through. This myth is an allegory for all of us. The world is filled with siren songs, pleasures that promise fulfillment but deliver ruin. Without self-control, we leap into the waves. With it, we pass safely by. Temptation is not only in pleasures but also in anger and fear. The insult tempts you to lash out. The danger tempts you to retreat dishonorably. The easy path tempts you to abandon what is hard but noble. Each of these moments is a proving ground. Will you serve your impulses, or will you serve reason? Will you betray yourself for a fleeting comfort, or will you remain loyal to your higher self? Every choice reveals whether you are a servant or a master. The man who resists temptation grows stronger each time. At first, the struggle feels impossible. The appetite screams, the anger burns, the fear trembles in your chest. Yet with each refusal, their voices grow weaker, their chains loosen. Eventually, what once ruled you now obeys you. This is the essence of training. The passions do not vanish, but they are brought under command. The horse still runs wild, but you hold the reins firmly, guiding it where you choose. To resist temptation is to seize back those reins, to remind yourself that you are the rider, not the beast. Every day brings new tests, some small, some great. You may not choose when they come, but you always choose how you meet them. The Stoics urged us to greet temptation as an ally in our training. For without resistance, muscles do not grow. Without temptation, self-control is never proven. Each trial is an opportunity to declare with your actions, "I am my own master." And with each victory, the unshakable power of discipline becomes more firmly your own. Struggle is the crucible in which strength is forged. No man becomes resilient by living a life of ease, and no character is built by walking a path without obstacles. The Stoics understood this deeply. Adversity is not an enemy to be cursed, but a teacher to be welcomed. It is through struggle that we discover what we are made of. Without resistance, the will remains weak. Without trials, the soul remains untested. To grow strong, one must not flee from hardship, but learn to transform it into power. Think of the athlete. His muscles do not strengthen by lying in comfort, but by straining against the weight that resists him. The more resistance he endures, the stronger he becomes. So it is with the soul. Every loss, every insult, every setback is a weight placed upon us. To curse it is to waste it. To bear it with courage is to grow stronger by it. Seneca reminded us that fire tests gold and misfortune tests brave men. Without trial, the soul remains unpolished, like metal that has never seen the flame. Even nature itself teaches us this lesson. The tree that grows in the shelter of a valley may appear beautiful, but it is weak, fragile against the storm. The tree that grows on the cliff, battered by winds, stretched by storms, becomes gnarled and strong. Its roots dig deep, its trunk holds firm. So too with men. Those who are never tested remain shallow. Those who endure struggle develop roots that cannot be torn up by fortune. They become unshakable, not in spite of struggle, but because of it. Struggle is also the forge of wisdom. The man who has never known pain cannot truly understand peace. The man who has never lost cannot appreciate what he possesses. The man who has never been tested cannot guide others through trials. Struggle refines perspective. It teaches us to distinguish what matters from what is trivial, what is eternal from what is fleeting. The Stoics did not romanticize suffering for its own sake, but they recognized its transforming power. To accept it, to endure it, to turn it into strength, this is the path of greatness. And yet, how often do we resist this truth? We wish for ease, for comfort, for fortune to smile upon us without interruption. But a life of comfort breeds weakness. while a life of struggle builds resilience. This is why the Stoics spoke of amor fati, the love of fate, not merely enduring what comes, but embracing it as fuel for growth. Every hardship is not merely something to survive, it is something to use. It is an opportunity to shape yourself into someone unshakable. Struggle is not the end of power, it is its beginning. Peace is the hidden treasure behind self-control, and it cannot be bought with gold or granted by circumstance. It must be cultivated within. The Stoics understood that true peace comes only when the soul is governed, when desires are restrained, when anger is subdued, when fear is mastered. Without self-control, the mind is a storm-tossed sea, pulled and battered by every passion. With self-control, it becomes a calm harbor, untroubled even as waves crash outside. Peace is the crown of discipline, the reward of mastery over the self. Consider how often people search for peace in external things. They seek it in wealth, yet the more they gain, the more restless they become. They seek it in pleasure, yet every indulgence leaves behind a hunger for more. They seek it in the approval of others, yet praise never silences the fear of criticism. These pursuits promise peace, but deliver agitation. External things are unstable, always shifting, always vulnerable to loss. If your peace depends on them, then your peace is fragile, doomed to vanish when fortune turns her face. The Stoics turned inward. They declared that peace lies in living according to reason, in accepting what is beyond control, in mastering what is within. When you control your desires, you are not thrown into misery by what you lack. When you restrain your anger, you are not torn apart by insults or injuries. When you overcome fear, you are not enslaved by the shadow of loss or death. This inner mastery produces a peace that does not depend on circumstance. It is carried within, unshaken by what happens outside. Such peace is not mere quietness. It is not the absence of conflict, but the presence of strength. A calm man in a storm is not calm because the storm is gentle, but because his heart is anchored. A steady mind in the midst of chaos is not steady because chaos is absent, but because self-control has fastened it to reason. This peace is active, resilient, immovable. It is the stillness of a mountain, standing firm even as winds roar around it. And what greater power can there be than this peace? The man who possesses it cannot be bribed, cannot be provoked, cannot be shaken. He is untouchable in the truest sense, for nothing external can disturb him. To rule others may give you armies, but to rule yourself gives you peace. And peace is rarer, stronger, and more enduring than any dominion over others. This is why the Stoics held that the highest power lies not in conquest, but in calm. To conquer the world is impressive, but to conquer yourself is divine. If you want power, begin with yourself. Do not look to fortune, to wealth, to reputation, to the shifting approval of the crowd. These things rise and fall like the tide. Build your strength where no storm can reach, within your own soul. The Stoics called us to this inner sovereignty, the only throne that cannot be overturned, the only kingdom that cannot be invaded. He who conquers himself is mightier than he who conquers a city, for cities may fall, but mastery of the self endures for life. The path is not easy, but it is simple. Discipline your desires, and you will not be dragged into slavery by every pleasure. Govern your anger, and no insult will have power over you. Steady your fear, and no threat will force you to betray your values. Each day you are given countless opportunities to practice this mastery, in your speech, in your choices, in your reactions. Do not wait for a grand trial to prove your strength. Prove it in the small moments, for these moments form the foundation of your character. The world will tempt you to believe that power lies outside yourself. It will point to the rich, the famous, the feared, and call them strong. But look closely, and you will see how often they are captives of their appetites, prisoners of their tempers, slaves to the opinion of the crowd. They appear mighty, but they are fragile, for their strength depends on things that can vanish. The Stoic knows better. He knows that true power cannot be taken away because it does not depend on fortune. It rests in the mind, disciplined by reason, in the will fortified by self-control. So let this be your call to action. Turn inward and begin your reign there. Do not demand mastery of the world until you have mastery of yourself. Do not chase the illusion of external control while neglecting the dominion that lies closest to you. Each time you choose reason over impulse, you take a step toward sovereignty. Each time you endure rather than complain, you secure your crown. Each time you say no to vice and yes to virtue, you build an empire within that no enemy can breach. You will stumble, as all men do. You will fall to desire, to anger, to fear at times, but rise again. The Stoics did not demand perfection, only progress. Each failure is a lesson. Each setback is part of the training. The man who persists, who refuses to surrender to weakness, who continues the work of self-mastery day by day, becomes unshakable. His peace cannot be stolen, his strength cannot be broken, his dignity cannot be destroyed. This is the reward of discipline. This is the crown of self-control. In the end, the choice lies before you, as it has for every man and woman throughout history. Will you be ruled by your impulses, or will you rule yourself? Will you live as a captive dressed in fine clothes, or as a sovereign of your own soul? The Stoics have shown us the path. It is narrow, it is demanding, but it leads to freedom, to peace, to unshakable power. Take it, walk it, master yourself, and you will never again be mastered.